is Greg Ciola. I'm the president and editor of Crusader Enterprises, and I'm going to make this short video here in honor of National Diabetes Awareness Month. November is dubbed National Diabetes Awareness Month, and since diabetes is a growing epidemic in America and around the world, I wanted to share some of the information that I have learned over the years that I think would be very useful to anyone that either has diabetes or pre-diabetes or has diabetes in their family and thinks that it is something that could impact them later in life. A lot of notes here on my desk. Some things I want to start with. First of all, according to the American Diabetes Association, 26 million children and adults in the United States have diabetes, and another 79 million Americans have pre-diabetes and are at risk for developing type 2. And the American Diabetes Association estimates that the total national cost of diagnosed diabetes in the United States is $174 billion a year. And when we talk about pre-diabetes, pre-diabetes would include names such as insulin-resistant diabetes, insulin resistance, adult onset diabetes, or hyperinsulinemia. So, according to the American Heart Association, almost 50% of Americans suffer from one or more symptoms of this disease. So, it's a serious problem in the country. At the turn of the century, some more facts here that are very pertinent. Per capita incidence of type 2 diabetes at the turn of the century, and I should say turn of the last century, not the one that we're in now, 0.0028%. By 1933, diabetes had zoomed 1,000% in the U.S. to become a disease faced by many doctors. And according to the CDC, this is a chart here from the CDC. I'm going to put it up on the screen if I can get it up there. The CDC shows you the top is the obesity figures, the bottom is diabetes figures. But this is going back just to 1994, which wasn't that long ago. And you look at the chart and they show you the different percentages, and you can just see the map going from light to darker. And the third figure here is actually 2007, so 5 years have gone by since then. And the figures are astounding. Every chart that you can see from the CDC or from any other government agency that publishes statistics on diabetes, the numbers just go up and up and up. Primarily starting from around 1950 to 1960 is really where you kind of start seeing it go up, and then right around the mid-70s into the mid-80s. From that point forward, it's almost a straight line up with diabetes. So there's reasons for this. This is what you're not going to learn from the medical community, sadly. And this is what my role is with this company. It's to educate people, to inform people, because I believe that there is a root cause to all disease. It isn't just that you happen to catch a disease. There's reasons for it. And diabetes really is an even easier one to peg, more so than even a lot of other diseases. Now, the stuff that I'm going to cover here in this video, while I am trying to single out diabetes specifically, you're going to see that this is going to involve many other diseases, because they all have kind of a very similar pathway. In fact, people know diabetes is a gateway to other diseases. If you have diabetes, you're at a greater risk of having a heart attack or a stroke. If you have diabetes, you're probably going to have a greater risk of coming down with cancer. So there's a connection to all of it. Anyway, so let me begin by saying here, what constitutes a healthy body or a healthy cell? You really have to get to the foundation, and when you look at it, it says in the book of Genesis chapter 2 verse 7, it said that the Lord formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into him the breath of life. So we know from creation, as it's outlined in the scriptures, that man came from the dust of the ground, which constitutes all the minerals that are in the soil. And then he breathed into him the breath of life, which is the life-giving oxygen. So it's minerals primarily, oxygen, and then water, which makes up about 2/3 or more of the human body. So water plus oxygen plus minerals equals the foundational building blocks to every cell in your body and to a healthy body system overall. And so if you're going to look at addressing any disease, you're going to have to look at addressing these things. So I've got a lot of different notes here to kind of outline how this stuff progresses. So picking up, diabetes really didn't start becoming a problem until the 1940s, and each decade as it went on it got worse and worse. So let's look at some of the things that began to happen back around that time that might help us understand in greater detail why there is a diabetes epidemic. First, they started using pesticides and chemical fertilizers on the soil. The fertilizers started primarily in the early 1950s. Pesticides been around a little bit longer than that. And there's a direct correlation to the introduction of pesticides and chemical fertilizers into the farms of America and around the world and a disease epidemic. It sounds too simple for people to really grasp that, but that's how simple it really is. And I have this outlined with a few different other points as well. So, some notes here to cover that. Why is that important? Here's what really happens in the soil. This information here comes from the National Institutes of Health. Did a research on it to see if there was any information from the government that supported the fact that somehow pesticides and chemical fertilizers would inhibit nutrition being taken up into the plants. And that's exactly what happens, and that's why most disease is a nutritional deficiency in addition to the other two things which I talked about. So right here, the effect on soil fertility and beneficial soil microorganisms. This is heavy treatment of soil with pesticides can cause populations of beneficial soil microorganisms to decline. That's extremely important. According to the soil scientist Dr. Elaine Ingham, if we lose both bacteria and fungi, then the soil degrades. Overuse of chemical fertilizers and pesticides have effects on the soil organisms that are similar to the human overuse of antibiotics. Indiscriminate use of chemicals might work for a few years, but after a while, there aren't enough beneficial soil organisms to hold on to the nutrients. So this is huge. We know about flora that's in the intestinal system. Our body requires healthy flora in the digestive system to process all nutrients, whether it's minerals or vitamins or other necessary cofactors that your body needs. The flora, these bacteria that are there, are necessary, and it's the same thing that happens on the land. So the soil needs these beneficial microorganisms, whether it's bacteria or fungi. Some of them attach to the roots of the plant, and they actually help the plants to absorb the minerals and the vitamins and all the other factors that are in the soil that God put there, so that that plant would get the nourishment that it needs and have the rich nutrient density that it needs in order to give nutrient density to the man that eats it. So we're seeing that pesticides and chemical fertilizers have a direct impact on the absorption of these things from the soil. This thing goes on just a little bit further. It says that, and I'm not good at pronouncing some of these words here, mycorrhizal fungi grow with the roots of many plants and aid in nutrient uptake. These fungi can also be damaged by herbicides in the soil. One study found that oryzolin and trifluralin both inhibited the growth of certain species of mycorrhizal fungi. Roundup, which is one of the most common pesticides on the market, has been shown to be toxic to this fungi in laboratory studies, and some damaging effects were seen at concentrations lower than those found in soil following typical applications. So that is very important to note. That's the start of the first domino that fell. And this is why diabetes can be traced primarily back to this time, and prior to that, yes, there was diabetes, but it was not common. It was a very, very limited disease. It wasn't something that people got in the kind of levels that we're seeing today. So that's the main thing. The other thing with diabetes, now we're taking all these grains, growing with pesticides and herbicides, and then they strip all the nutrition out of these grains to make a lot of the food that's on the market. This is what the word refined means. We hear that word often, and I don't know if the average person on the street really even knows what refined means. But again, if you go back to this time period, 1940s, 1950s, we see that a lot of people moved off of farms and started living in bigger cities. We became more of an industrialized country, and because of that, there was this need to have longer lasting food. Packaged food started coming on the scene, and it became very popular. The most common was bread. You know, back then in those days, most people made their own breads at home with bread machines or however they did it. They would take the whole wheat, harvested, and they would take those things and grind them up and make their own flour and their own wheat, and which they would use for the bread. And so that type of bread, though, shelf life on it is maybe a few days. Usually after 24 to 36 hours of making your own fresh bread with fresh ingredients, you're going to notice that the bread's going to start turning hard. So, you know, if you want to have a grocery store and you want to have bread that sits out there on the shelf that's going to last for weeks, you have to change that process. So what do? They come in and they take that wheat berry and they strip everything out of it to make it a dead product. They take all the vitamins and all the minerals and all the nutritional elements that are in there that would naturally make that product go bad and spoil over time. They process it, refine it, strip everything out of it, and then they do something even greater. They come in and fortify it. They take synthetically produced vitamins, which are all produced by pharmaceutical companies, and a lot of these minerals, basically inorganic minerals, I can't call them synthetic, but they're not life-giving minerals, a lot of inorganic minerals, and they take them and then put it back into the mix, and we call this fortified. And that is somehow supposed to be the same product. It's not. And so we can see a huge incidence of disease and nutritional deficiency beginning with the fortification of food. The two biggest things they started with were sugar and wheat, but it's gone on. It's your barley and it's your oats and it's your other things as well. And you know, they started pasteurizing the milk, which prior to that, you know, a lot of people used to drink raw milk. But raw milk isn't going to last long. Plus, there were concerns about bacterial contamination, especially if it was pumped out of the cow and then, you know, within a short period of time, it would end up spoiling. So how do you get around that? How can you have milk that sits on the store shelf for 2, 3, 4 weeks without going bad? They pasteurize it. By pasteurizing it, they kill all the bacteria in it. If there's anything left that's in there, it's not going to have the type of health benefits that it would have had in a raw state. So we can see that all of these things play a role. You're not going to hear this from the medical community. They don't cover these issues. Their whole mindset, their whole philosophy, their whole empire is built on drugs and drug-based medicine. I know what I'm saying here sounds basic, and it is. It's just hard to believe that so many people can't seem to figure it out. And hopefully this video will help you understand it more. So, let me pick up here just some percentages that are going to be important to note. So, when you refine these grains, there are certain minerals that are in there that, if in a whole food form, would be extremely important for the human body as far as regulating blood sugar, balancing body pH, keeping the bones healthy and strong. Now, 91% of all chromium is removed when white flour is made. White flour without the chromium is a diabetes guarantee. 92% of selenium is removed when white flour is made. 95% of the mineral silicon is removed when white flour is made. So we see that these are huge percentages. Chromium, which I'm going to cover a little bit here because this is all going to dovetail into chromium. Food-grown chromium is the biggest nutrient, the most important mineral that is missing from the majority of people's diets today. This is directly attributed to the diabetes epidemic. Now, I believe that it's a little bit more involved than just chromium, because as I'm showing you here, all these minerals and all this nutrition is being blocked from the food in a way that is going to damage the body. But chromium in itself is huge. So 91% of chromium is removed. 92% of selenium. Selenium is one of the most important anti-cancer minerals that is known to man. They've done incredible studies on selenium and what that can do for preventing cancer. Then, in addition to that, over 75% of magnesium is removed when refining white flour. Magnesium is one of the most important minerals. It's a major mineral. Magnesium and calcium are extremely important in the human body, and you're taking 75% out. Why is that important? When I cover some of this, because 1/3 of the American diet consists of white refined flour and white sugar. 1/3 of the calories, 1/3 of people's diets consist of white flour and white sugar in some capacity, whether it's in a box, can, package, however it comes out. And so we look at the introduction of these foods, again right around the same time that this stuff started happening with the soil, and the numbers just go up, 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 and up. So how do you dismiss that there's a link? Again, basic information. The other problem that we have, the introduction of high fructose corn syrup. Now, sugar, pure sugar cane actually contains one of the highest sources of natural chromium and some minerals that are in it. Pure sugar cane, growing in the wild, if you take it, it actually has a brown color to it, and the reason why is because that's all the minerals that are in there. And if you ate pure sugar cane, natural, the way it grew in the world, it would never harm you. Not, granted, you can't overdo anything, but you would never have the kind of problems that we're having today. But then when you take that sugar and you strip all of these minerals out of there, all these elements that are in that sugar naturally, and come up with white sugar, again, leads to a massive explosion in disease when you start looking at the charts. So from there, white sugar became more expensive to the food packaging industry. So around the late 60s and into the 70s, and then in a wide scale into the 1980s, they swapped out a lot of pure white sugar, which was junk, for something even junkier called high fructose corn syrup. And it says here that high fructose corn syrup was first introduced by Richard Marshall and Earl Cooey in 1957. They were, however, unsuccessful in making it viable for mass production. The industrial production process and creation was made by Dr. Yoshiyuki Tagasaki at the Agency of Industrial Science and Technology of Ministry of International Trade and Industry of Japan in 1965 through 1970. High fructose corn syrup was rapidly introduced to many processed foods and soft drinks in the U.S. from about 1975 to 1985. So now I can go back on these charts, if I had one. There's one that I came across. So go back to the 1950s, diabetes is very low. You see it going up and up and up and up, and then we look here, it's pretty much a straight deal until 1985, which says prior to 1985 they were using sugar in a lot of the soda drinks. When they swapped it out for high fructose corn syrup. And you can see from 1985 up to 2006 off of this chart, and it's even higher now, that the numbers just keep going up and up. So it's all connected. High fructose corn syrup is a disaster to our health, and it just makes a problem even worse. Since the introduction of high fructose corn syrup, there has been a 1,000% increase in high fructose corn syrup consumption between 1970 and 1990, and a correlating rise in obesity rates. Because of the way the body metabolizes fructose from beverages, researchers argue that it may play a role in the obesity epidemic. Well, that's not really hard to figure out. There are some people, this is a quote, and now commercials claim it, that high fructose corn syrup is no different than other sweeteners when it comes to weight gain and obesity, but our results make it clear that this just isn't true, at least under the conditions of our tests, said psychology professor Bart Hobel, who specializes in the neuroscience of appetite, weight, and sugar addiction. When rats are drinking high fructose corn syrup at levels well below those in soda pop, they're becoming obese. Every single one across the board. Even when rats are fed a high-fat diet, you don't see this. They don't all gain extra weight. So, that's rat studies. Every single rat fed high fructose corn syrup got fat. That's not a surprise, and it's quite sad. So let me also digress onto another subject here. That's on Francis Pottinger. He conducted some very interesting studies. It says that Pottinger used donated laboratory cats to test the potency of cut. Okay, we're going to have to cut this. Another interesting subject to cover is something called the Pottinger cat study. And I think this will add further supporting documentation and evidence to what I'm outlining here with these problems. Pottinger cat study, in a nutshell, they took cats and they fed groups of cats, some raw meat, some cooked meat. I'll cover some of the specifics here in a second. And the deal was that many of the cats started showing symptoms of disease and they got sick. But the big thing that was important was that each generation of cats that were fed this way got worse and worse. Disease symptoms showed up sooner and sooner. So my point with this is look at diabetes. Diabetes, as I said, was very unknown mainly in the 1940s. But people that started getting diabetes in the 1940s and the 1950s and the 1960s, they had kids. And so if they were diabetic and they had kids, and then they had kids, each generation the diabetes problem it shows up sooner. So if it showed up in your great-grandfather when he was 75 or 80, and it showed up in your mother when she was 40, and now you're only 20 and you have it, there's a reason for it. All of what I already covered kind of lays that out. But it's interesting because each generation that lives on this type of diet with the nutritional deficiencies gets weaker and weaker. Let me pick up here on the study here. It said that in one study, one group of cats was fed a diet of 2/3 raw meat, 1/3 raw milk, and cod liver oil, while the second group was fed a diet of 2/3 cooked meat, 1/3 raw milk, and cod liver oil. The cats fed the all raw diet were healthy, while the cats fed the cooked meat diet developed various health problems. By the end of the first generation, the cats started to develop degenerative diseases and became quite lazy. By the end of the second generation, the cats had developed degenerative diseases by midlife and started losing their coordination. By the end of the third generation, the cats had developed degenerative diseases very early in life, and some were born blind and weak and had a much shorter lifespan. Many of the third generation cats couldn't even produce offspring. There was an abundance of parasites and vermin, while skin diseases and allergies increased from an incidence of 5% in normal cats to over 90% in the third generation of deficient cats. Kittens of the third generation did not survive 6 months. Bones became soft and pliable, and cats suffered from adverse personality changes. Males became docile while females became more aggressive. The cats suffered from most of the degenerative diseases encountered in human medicine and died out totally by the fourth generation. So, our generation right now, we're in the third generation of when they messed around with the food supply, when they started introducing the pesticides and the fertilizers into the soil, when they started refining the sugar, when they started refining the wheat, when they started putting the high fructose corn syrup on the market in place of the sugar, that when all of these things started happening, from that point to now in 2012, we're in about the third generation. What are we seeing? The World Health Organization claims that by 2020, over 50% of all U.S. adults are going to be diabetic. 50%! And it's not surprised. Look at most people. I mean, take a snapshot photo, go to the mall, go anywhere. I mean, it is unbelievable how many people are obese, grossly overweight. It's terrible. There's an answer to it. And so, what do most people do? They go to their doctor. And what's your doctor going to do? He's going to just give you a drug. Drugs only mask symptoms. Remember what I just said. They only mask symptoms. They do not fix the problem. There isn't a pharmaceutical drug on the market that is going to go and fix the nutritional deficiencies. If you're getting food that has no minerals in it, or low mineral content, or it's lacking trace minerals, or it's low in chromium, or it's low in selenium, you aren't going to be healthy. It's only going to be a matter of time before your body breaks down and gets sick. Diabetes is just one symptom. Cancer, heart disease, they're all related to this problem. It's the same across the board. So, drugs, a good analogy of a pharmaceutical drug would be, let's say you're driving down the road in your car, and the car seems to be running fine, but all of a sudden out of the blue, your engine light comes on. All that means is something's wrong, but you don't know what. So you know that you have to take it into a mechanic. So you go to a mechanic. Well, this would be similar to, you might not know you have diabetes, you may feel fine, your car's running perfect, or you feel like it's running okay, but you go to the doctor and they test your blood sugar, and the doctor says, your blood sugar levels are high, we need to do something for you. We're gonna prescribe this drug for you, and then you're going to have to stay on that. Problem is, one drug leads to another drug, which leads to another drug, and it's just a big revolving door, and you never get off drugs. They never fix the problem, and then more symptoms will manifest, and then you take a drug for this symptom and a drug for that symptom, never getting to the root problem. And so you take your car in with your engine light on, and instead of the mechanic fixing your car, he says, I know what I'm going to do. Let's just clip the wire that's making the engine light go off. So you get back in your car and you go down the highway thinking that your car's fixed. Your car hasn't been fixed. All you did was turn off the symptom. The engine light came on. But you didn't go and fix what's the problem. Something is wrong. Maybe your engine's low on oil. Something basic. I mean, nutrition is basic, isn't it? So that's pretty astounding when you think about it. So I've covered the Pottinger cat study, high fructose corn syrup. The other major problem with diabetes is the introduction of hydrogenated oils into the food supply. Hydrogenation is a process where they bubble hydrogen gas through the oil. You take a liquid vegetable oil, it could be corn oil, safflower oil, corn, whatever, soy oil, if you take hydrogen and you apply hydrogen through a chemical process to that oil, it turns it into a semi-solid. So it would go from a liquid to maybe like a buttery type consistency. There's reasons for that. Again, it goes back to the need to extend shelf life. If you use pure vegetable oils that are not contaminated with hydrogen, then these oils are going to go rancid fairly soon. So if you need to have a product that sits on the shelf for 3 years without ever going bad, without ever tasting rancid, or without ever spoiling, then you don't have a vested interest in using pure vegetable oils. You would rather use something that's hydrogenated, because hydrogen actually extends the shelf life. So these oils won't ever go bad. And that's the main reason why food companies use partially hydrogenated oils. You can find it on so many different products. Just about anything that's in a box or a can or a package says partially hydrogenated or hydrogenated, and it's astounding. Now why is this important? The same way that hydrogen would make the oil get hard. This is what happens when you eat products with hydrogenated oils. It actually solidifies your cells. So this is even more of a problem with diabetes. So as your cells solidify and get coated in this hydrogen, now you can eat the best nutrition in the world beyond that. If you have been eating a lot of hydrogenated oils, your cells aren't going to get the nutrition. It's going to block the minerals, it's going to block the vitamins, it's going to block the nutrients, it's going to interfere with the oxygen in the cells, it's going to interfere with the hydration of the cells. So now, goes back to how I started this thing, that we are made up primarily of water, oxygen, and minerals. So these three things that we need in our body all get messed with through hydrogenated oils. So that's even further into what I've covered here. So I've kind of laid it out here. It's about a 5-point process. Pesticides and fertilizers block nutrient absorption. Refining process takes more minerals and nutrients out of the food. Hydrogenated fats coat the cells, block nutrients, interfere with cellular oxygen and hydration. And then a high diet of refined foods and refined sugar, which makes up a third of the American diet, depletes the body of mineral stores. And then lastly, refined foods without fiber cause a huge blood sugar spike. Complex carbohydrates are foods that have a lot of fiber in them, and when you eat them, like brown rice and things like that, the body digests them and processes them a lot slower. So the sugar, natural sugar that would be in that food, is digested a lot slower. It's not a quick dump into the blood. Refined foods, they quickly dump the sugar into the blood. They don't have the fiber that's in there naturally, and so they pass through the system quickly, and the sugar makes it into the blood fast, and it's like a shock to the system. And it doesn't happen the first time you eat this food, but eat it your whole life. Start from a young kid and start eating it, and the older you get, the quicker these things are going to manifest and have problems. As I talked about here, a diet of refined foods and refined sugar, which constitutes a third of the American diet, depletes body stores of minerals. This is very important to grasp and understand. This is another reason why there's a huge disease epidemic in this country. Your body naturally, from when you were born, has what you would call a mineral reserve bank. It's stuff that's on deposit for your whole life. It's designed to be there for your whole life. So you can handle some things here and there when you're confronted with them. However, go back again now to the 40s, you start seeing all these things happen. They get introduced into the food supply. Your mineral reserve bank gets eaten up at a very young age. First of all, many kids that are born today are born right out of the gate with a mineral deficiency. Secondly, all of these foods, the sodas being the worst, in a lot of these refined foods and processed foods that people are eating, these fast foods, they are acidic, extremely acidic on the body. Why is acidity bad? In addition to the fact that these foods have garbage in them for nutrition, that they're devoid of a lot of the vitamins and minerals and nutrients that the human body needs, they actually have a double whammy effect on you, because once you eat them, they acidify the body. What happens with acid? Your body has blood that pumps, And your body, like the body temperature, your body constantly fights to maintain a body temperature of 98.6 degrees. You don't control it. You can't think about it and make it go up or down in a manner that's easy. Same thing with your blood. Your blood constantly works to maintain a blood pH of approximately 7.365. It's a tight range. It's slightly alkaline. So when you eat acidic foods, and you eat all these foods that have an acid effect, an acid residue in the body, once it processes through digestion and makes it into the blood, your blood has to neutralize that. If your blood can't neutralize that acid, it would kill you. And so the main way that your body, and I'm oversimplifying this, but the main way your body will address this acidic condition is through taking your mineral reserves. And it takes your alkaline minerals, calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium. Those are your 4 biggest ones, although there's others. And it takes them and it'll pull them from other areas of the body and pull them into the blood in order to buffer these acids. So let me take an example of soda. Soda has a pH of about 2.5. 7 is neutral on the pH scale. And every number down is multiplied by 10. So going from 7 neutral, if you go to 6, 6 means that that is 10 times more acidic than neutral. Go down to 5, so that would mean that 5 is 100 times more acidic. 4 would be 1,000 times more acidic. 3 would be 10,000 times more acidic. So you're looking at soda that is probably 50,000 times more acidic. If I'm doing the math correct, roughly 50,000 times more acidic than neutral pH. How many people drink soda every day? You have diabetes and you drink soda? I don't even care if it's diet soda. Diet soda has the same effect. And diet soda may even be worse for you. A regular soda is bad. It's loaded with the high fructose corn syrup. It's loaded with all these acids that have an effect on the body. So you drink the soda and it goes into your stomach. If your body doesn't neutralize that acid effect, you would die. So what's it going to do? It's going to go anywhere it can in your body to find calcium, magnesium, potassium, and sodium. And if that is not there in your mineral reserve bank, it steals it from your joints, from your teeth, from anywhere, from your tissues. So it starts depriving your body of these vital minerals to buffer these acids. Does it happen on the first soda? Does it happen on the first acidic food that you eat? No. Everything in balance, everything in moderation. But this is why, if you've heard before, that soda will turn your bones into like a sponge. They get all these holes in your bones and you get osteoporosis and your body breaks down. It's all connected to this whole thing with diabetes. Same thing happens there. So now you're not getting the minerals you need from your diet. It's not in the food you eat, and you're not getting it from the supplementation you're taking. And so your body's going to have to go and steal these minerals. And over time, it'll break your bones down. And so the end result is disease. And eventually, the end result is going to be death. So I've spent a great part of this interview kind of outlining some of the critical things. There may be other things there, but I'm telling you, what I've just laid out here, this is it. This is it. This is not rocket science. You can prove this factually off of the internet. Go to Google. You want to question anything that I'm saying here about anything that I've covered, it's all there for anyone to figure it out. You say, well, why doesn't my doctor know this? I'm not here to criticize the doctors. You know, I think a lot of doctors are very well-meaning. They've spent a great amount of money and time to get an education. It's the system that's corrupt. In order to get a degree to be a doctor, you have to go to a medical university. And that's a subject for a whole nother video production. I could spend hours talking about the whole system and how it got set up. But in a nutshell, doctors are not taught nutrition. They have very limited training in nutrition and the application of minerals. The 3 things that I mentioned, water, minerals, and oxygen in the disease process. They're not taught about these things, and so it's something that they don't have any education on. Their degree is in drugs. They come out and they know the ins and outs of drugs. At least some of them do. Otherwise, they'll rely on a pharmaceutical rep to come in and teach them about them. And they think that, you know, if you have diabetes, if you have osteoporosis, if you have heart disease, the answer is drugs. Drugs, drugs. That's the only answer they have, is drugs. And then if it gets really bad, then we got to cut out body parts, we got to chemo you, radiate you, and everything else. Until we look at the foundation, and I hope through this video I've got into that, until we look at the foundation of where it's coming from, they're going to be like a dog running around in a circle chasing its tail. They're never going to get to the problem, to the root of the problem. So now that I laid that foundation, let me cover some things here that would be educational and worthy for you to know. If you want to beat disease, if you want to beat diabetes, if you want to beat osteoporosis, if you want to live a cancer-free life, this is important for everybody. I don't have a magic bullet. I can just tell you what's causing the problem. And then anything that would help fix that problem is what you need to do. It isn't one thing. There isn't one magic supplement that's going to solve every problem that you have. I'm going to show you a few that would be important for you to put into your body, but I don't want to oversimplify it either. I've got about 11 things here that I could think of. Number 1, chromium. 2, selenium. 3, silica. 4, magnesium. 5, calcium. 6, vitamin B6. 7, sulfur. 8 would be trace minerals. 9 would be essential fatty acids. 10 would be exercise, and 11 would be proper hydration. Most people don't drink enough water, and I could cover some of these things in a little more detail. The most important one I'm going to focus on for diabetes is chromium, because all the research indicates that this molecule that's been termed GTF, which means glucose tolerance factor, this GTF chromium is the most important mineral in the world that is needed to pull the sugar into the cells so that it's utilized. I'm going to show you a picture here, and I don't know if I can put it up on the screen. I will. Anyway, let me give you this brief analogy here. A compound named glucose tolerance factor is comparable to a dock worker. GTF dock workers move the glucose load from the insulin truck to the insulin receptor site, loading dock, and into the cells for on-site production of ATP. If there are not enough dock workers, quote, GTF chromium, at the loading dock, which is the insulin receptor site, then work slows and becomes inefficient. The absence of GTF chromium dock workers may result in a traffic jam of insulin trucks filled with glucose, quote, blood sugar. This results in what is called high blood sugar, of which the chronic state is called diabetes. The picture here, it shows a truck backing up into a warehouse, and on the truck would be pallets of glucose. And the other picture shows a forklift with the words GTF chromium on it. And the GTF chromium is going to the truck, picking up the pallets of insulin, takes it off the truck, puts it on the dock, and then brings it into the pallet racks, which would be considered the cells. I'm trying to break it down in a nutshell. So the chromium has to perform this function. If the chromium isn't there, then the trucks back up. And the trucks just don't stop. It's not like there's a traffic jam and the trucks stop. The trucks keep backing up. And there's more glucose and not enough chromium, and then it just keeps backing up and backing up and backing up, and then the stuff never gets to the cells, and you have a major shortage. And I'm going to show you some pretty astounding information on chromium that I've covered. And I don't get my research from my own studying. Not that I haven't done that. The point I'm trying to make is that the biggest and best chromium expert in the entire world, hands down, is a gentleman that I came across about 7 or 8 years ago. His name is Chris Barr. Many of you watching this video may have heard Chris or read some of his stories. I have free health reports from him up on our internet site that talk about some of these things. He's written a book. This was my first introduction into Chromium. Nutrition and You, Chromium, Sparkling Health for Your Life and Living. And he really covers this thing in such great detail. He covers what is Chromium, how Chromium works, why you need it, the amount that's needed, the form that's needed, why some forms of Chromium don't work, and what popular forms of Chromium actually work harm. This book is 40 pages long. You could literally sit down and read this book in a half an hour, but I'm telling you, this book would blow everybody away that would read it. They would be astounded at the power-packed information that's in here. In fact, anybody that has diabetes, you need to read this book. We sell it. It's available on our website. You will have a problem, your doctor should read this book. This would revolutionize and change the entire industry as far as diabetes is concerned, if people would learn about what he has to say here. I have some interviews that I've done with him. I think one of the most important points that he gets into is about a doctor named Dr. Henry Alfred Schroeder, who was a medical doctor. Dr. Schroeder was a graduate of Columbia and Yale and a tenured professor at Dartmouth University. Schroeder initially started with investigations on 3 minerals. One of those was chromium. The use of chromium resulted in a record for longevity in his laboratory animal studies. This was a very surprising and most unexpected result because the purpose of Schroeder's newly established laboratory was intended to be establishing toxicity rather than seeking nutritional benefit. So this guy just happened to stumble on the fact that chromium was involved in longevity and blood sugar. It said Schroeder shifted from a toxic focus to a nutritional one for his chromium studies and discovered that cholesterol problems were in fact a manifestation of severe chromium deficiency. Subsequently, Schroeder concluded that heart disease was a manifestation of severe chromium deficiency. It therefore made sense that diabetics were far more prevalent to have heart problems, as birth conditions were a manifestation of severe, I'm reading this wrong, as both conditions, not birth conditions, as both conditions were a manifestation of severe chromium deficiency. There's other stuff here. Chromium deficiency has become more chronic with each passing decade. I'm not going to read all this. You can actually obtain this report here. This one is available on our website for free. It'd be a phenomenal report for you to download and get. It's titled, "These 5 Nutrients Will Eliminate Your Fear of Dying from the Top Health Killers." And the 5 nutrients are part of the 11 that I outlined here: chromium, selenium, silica, magnesium, and B6. And we covered each of these minerals in detail here. Chris Barr says, "In all my years in the nutrition field, which has been about 4 decades, he says, I have never witnessed a single element do more for people's health problems than I have with chromium. It has been astounding. Growing chromium supplementation is the best option to make up for a lifetime of poor dietary habits. Growing chromium supplements are the only ones that are truly effective in restoring levels of the sparkling mineral more precious than gold to your health." And then he picks up on this Dr. Schroeder that I just quoted again. Dr. Schroeder compared tissue levels of chromium in teenagers and those 40 years of age in Americans to those of 3 other cultures that did not follow after westernized dietary choices in Mideast, Southeast Asian, and African communities. He discovered very little change in the non-American cultures, but dramatic decreases in America. Almost 25% of Americans had no detectable levels of chromium at all by the age of 40. That was more than 30 years ago. And things have not gotten any better. If anything, things are worse. This is a significant part of the reason that the average age of adult onset type 2 diabetes is continually decreasing. 100 years ago, diabetes was a disease primarily of old age. Now the average age is approaching 40, and it's an epidemic with young kids. And he's got another quote here. Dr. Schroeder quoted, that the typical American diet, with about 60% of its calories from refined sugar, refined flour, and fat. He noted that this diet was apparently designed not only to provide as little chromium as feasible, but to cause depletions, to cause depletion of body stores of chromium. The result is a prevalent disease, in this case, arthrosclerosis, concluded Schroeder about chromium deficiency. Another story that's up there on our site. Chris Barr, another famous quote, "The trace element mineral chromium is the single most important nutrient discovered to date, though very few know very much about it, and most of what those few know is wrong." So, you want to fix not just diabetes, if you want anti-aging, if you want longevity, if you want health, you're going to have to work on all of these things. I've given you enough information to get your wheels turning and to get you going in the right direction. Nobody can teach you this on their own. You have to be the researcher. You have to be the one to do the work. Order the book and read it. Go to our website and download some of these free health reports. If you want to get the truth, if you want the facts that you need to live long, to live healthy, to not be a diabetes statistic, then all of these things are important. Now, I have a collection of different supplements here that kind of follow along the protocols I outlined, Chromium being one of them. And Chris Barr, he is a fan, and so am I, of food growing. Obviously, this is the way the body needs it. And when I say food growing, they take these minerals and they start with a broth medium, and using a form of yeast, and then they add these minerals and they add these nutrients to this medium, and the yeast picks it up and grows it and reproduces it, and then there's a process where they can actually get that broth medium. It would be a high nutrient dense concentration of a mineral or a vitamin, and put it into a nutritional supplement. Why is that good? It mimics food. It has the enzymes, it has the minerals, it has the cofactors, and all the elements that you would find if you were growing this from a plant. So it is important to eat whole food. It is important to eat properly. Avoid the landmines like I'm talking about. But in addition to that, I think so many people are deficient that you can't escape the fact that you need some of these nutrients daily in your body in order to ward off some of these potential threats. So chromium would be extremely important. Innate Response, you could actually go to their website and learn more about their processing and their growing. Their website is www.innateresponse.com. I believe they have a whole section up there that discusses how they grow these nutrients and why they are superior in form to any other nutrient. So chromium will be important. Chris Barr recommends 1 tablet 3 times a day, and he's had huge success in managing blood sugar without using drugs by just putting chromium back in the body. Now, I think, like I said, it would be a little bit oversimplistic to just say chromium, because as you're seeing here, you're blocking a lot of the other minerals as well. The magnesium's not there, the calcium is not there, the silica's not there. So all these other minerals, they have a whole food growing calcium, they have a whole food growing selenium, they have a whole food growing magnesium, a whole food growing B6. You'll see from reading these reports that we have that each one of these nutrients plays a specific role and purpose in keeping your body healthy. There's a silica, which comes from the horsetail herb, which is one of the highest sources of natural silica in the world. They brew it into a tea, and they have a special proprietary process where they can extract it out and then put it into a tablet, and it's one of the best sources of silica you can find in the world. That would be huge. The other thing is, there's a product that we sell called Potency. These are 5 organic sea vegetables that come from off of the coast of Maine. And why are these important? The ocean contains every single mineral that's in the human body. In fact, the mineral profile of the ocean is almost identical to human blood plasma. So if you can get nutrition from these ocean plants, they're in a matrix that mirrors the way your cells need the food. And there's also many vital trace minerals that you're going to get. These are minerals in isolation, basically. These are going to give you every mineral. There's chromium in here, there's magnesium in here, there's calcium in here, there's silica in here. However, I don't believe that the quantities are going to be high enough to combat some of these health problems and challenges, especially if these deficiencies have run in your family, if you're obese, or if there's obesity in your family, if diabetes is in your family. Then getting back to that Pottinger cat study, you're going to see that these things are set up so that you would be more prone to getting sick quicker, and that's why it would be important to take advantage of some of these things. I mentioned the fats. Getting off all hydrogenated fats is an absolute must. You cannot eat these things. And then you have to also put good fats into your body. This is one that we have, sockeye salmon oil, which is an omega-3 oil. Once you get off of these bad fats and you get the good fats in there, it helps the cells to have a better phospholipid membrane, and it's going to allow the nutrients to get into the cells quicker and easier. It's going to help to get the oxygen in there, and it's going to help to detoxify the cells properly so that everything works better. It's an absolute fact that omega-3s and 6s, these essential oils, are extremely beneficial and important to the cells. The other product that we have here is something called Willard water. Many of you maybe have never even heard of Willard water. Willard water is phenomenal. It has a pH balance of 12.3. This will help alkalize your body, and in addition to alkalizing your body, it is going to make all of your supplements work better. They've done research with Willard water that shows that 80 to 85% of the supplements you take get better absorbed into your body. A lot of people are just urinating their nutritional supplements down the drain. So you want cellular absorption of those nutrients, and this will help do that. So it's going to help bring the nutrients into your cells better, and it's going to help balance the pH levels of the body. This product's been around for, I believe, almost 40 years. It's phenomenal. You just dilute it with water and drink it. Every glass of water you drink, you'll notice an impact almost immediately. One of the biggest things you'll notice is a much cleaner taste in your mouth. In fact, one of the ways to tell if your body's acidic is just simply open your mouth and look at your tongue. A lot of people have a white coating on their tongue, or they have bad breath, and you can tell by that there's something going wrong with the acid in the body. And this product would help neutralize that. The last thing I have here is organic sulfur. Sulfur was something I will cover in a separate video. I discussed it briefly here. There's something with soil called the sulfur cycle, and there's a lot of information out there that supports the fact that the introduction of chemical fertilizers and pesticides into the ground and onto the plants has broken the sulfur cycle. Sulfur is one of the most important minerals needed in the human body. It makes amino acids, which are critical for life. Sulfur actually oxygenates the cells. It brings the good stuff in and it takes the trash out. And so if you don't have enough sulfur in your body, your cells are not going to be healthy. So this one would be extremely important. I'm not recommending anything here specifically as do it this exact way for a diabetes protocol. Everything here would be important. I know money is something that is an issue. So if you were diabetic, I would probably say chromium is an absolute must for anybody and everyone. You definitely need that. If you couldn't afford anything else beyond that, then I would probably say the sulfur and the chromium would be your best bet. You need it, whether you're diabetic or not. No matter what health problem you could potentially come down with in your life, you need these minerals. But you need to really get educated on all the minerals because the deficiency is in all of them. There's not enough magnesium or calcium or potassium or sulfur or selenium or silica. This is what's happening with the food. This is what's happening with fortification, and if you want to beat this, then get educated and start changing your diet and start taking some of these things. If you don't take our products, then do the research and find some that you think are better. I believe that these are some of the top ones you'll come across. Anyway, I want to thank you very much for listening. I hope that you were blessed by this information that I've presented here, and look forward to covering many other health topics in the future. Thank you.
I am killing it.